Welcome to Purpose of Heart, the podcast, where real stories meet God's promises. I'm Priscilla Allman, and every week we dive into powerful conversations about purpose in the pressure through caregiving, illness, grief, addiction, and more. If you've ever asked, God, where are you in this? You're in the right place. Be sure to follow the show, and let's find purpose together. Hi, and welcome back to Purpose of Heart, the podcast. I'm your host, Priscilla Allman, and in times past, we've spoken about standing firm when everyone else is bowing down. You remember our friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to compromise and did so even when they were threatened with a fiery furnace. Today, we're going to step into that fiery furnace. This is where the story shifted from faith in theory to faith in the fire. And if you've ever been through something that felt as though it was burning you from every side, this episode is for you. So the context of our story today is found in Daniel chapter 3. Now, in this chapter, it says that King Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury. His expression changed towards them. How dare they defy him? The same king who gave them favor, now turned his face against them. He commanded the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, and he had his strongest men bind them fully clothed and throw them in. It was so hot that the very soldiers who obeyed the order died in that heat. Now pause right there. The thing that was supposed to destroy them destroyed the very ones who stood against them. Sometimes the very weapon that the enemy formed for your harm burns up before it even reaches you. It reminds me of that verse, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And if we go down a little bit in that same chapter, in Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar says, look, I see 4 men loose, walking around in the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Can we stop and praise for a moment? The fire didn't bind them, it freed them. That's how our God works. The same fire that the enemy intended to break them, God used to burn away what was holding them back. He didn't remove the fire. He changed the outcome. When Nebuchadnezzar saw what was happening, he came near the furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Did you catch that? Servants of the Most High God. Just moments ago, he mocked their faith. Now he's declaring servants of the Most High. And when they stepped out, scripture says there wasn't even the smell of smoke on them. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever been to like a camp out or like a bonfire, and you've been there for even just a short amount of time, your hair, when you walk away, even smells a little bit like smoke. Supernatural protection, right? Their clothes wasn't burned. Their hair wasn't singed. Nothing. The only thing that changed was what had been binding them. Family, when God walks you through a fire. You come out freer, lighter, and stronger than when you went in. And the beauty is, people see it. Your testimony becomes someone else's turning point. Because of their faith, God was now glorified. And the king issued a new decree. Their obedience changed a nation. If we go down to verse 28 in that chapter, it says, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's words and yielded their bodies, that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God." There's that word again, yielded. They didn't just trust God with their words. They trusted God with their lives. They yielded their bodies, their comfort, their safety, even their control, so that his glory could be revealed. Family, that's purpose. Purpose isn't just about avoiding the fire. It's about seeing God in it. We all face seasons that feel heated. Loss, uncertainty, rejection, illness. But the promise stands. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. Isaiah 43:2. Now, I don't know if you all are familiar, right, in the past chapters of Daniel, where initially they were captured and asked, not to, they had made a special request not to defile themselves with the king's meat. Now, in that instance, God granted them favor, and they never even had to go through that situation. And by that, I mean, like, the person in charge was amenable to having them go through the test for the 10 days and have the vegetables and water, and that change was made to their diet, right? But this time, they still stood their ground for what they believed in. However, they had to pass through that actual trial. And what we see here, though, is that even though there was a change in how God dealt with the situation, he was there with them in both times. And we actually see that throughout the scriptures. But this, episode, we're talking specifically about Daniel. So we see that in other instances too. And one thing I'll say is, in this particular story, we see both sides of deliverance, right? In Daniel chapter 2, God delivered them before the crisis even touched them. In Daniel chapter 3, this chapter that we're talking about today, he delivered them through it. And both brought him glory. And I want to challenge you guys to think about times in your own lives where you may have had differences in the way that God has walked you through different challenges. He may have allowed in some instances that you didn't have to see the crisis at all. And in other times, he stood with you in the fire. And one thing that's I found helpful in my own walk is actually writing these things down and really documenting his faithfulness, because it's so easy, especially in times where you are in the heat, to be concerned. But if you have a physical reminder, like it's written down, he helped me through this. I went through this, I came out on the other side. It really helps to sort of bolster and strengthen you in those times. So, if you're in a furnace season right now, don't assume that God has abandoned you. Sometimes He's just showing up in a different form. Take a breath and release. Let's make this real. Okay. What fire are you walking through? Maybe it's emotional pain, financial strain, family conflict, or uncertainty about your next step. Or it could be like me, where seemingly everything is going wrong all at once. There was a season where it was as though everything was against me. But there were also times during that season where I saw evidence of His fingerprints and in my life during that trial. You may not see Him, but know that He's right there with you. And I would encourage you to prayerfully look at your circumstance and see where He has been showing up for you, right? Because you could have some financial strain. It could be very bad. However, you could still have food. A neighbor could have, I don't know, dropped off some groceries. Something could have happened that, even though it's not the way or the normal way you would have provided for yourself, somehow you've still been provided for. The fourth man is still in the fire. And maybe, just maybe, the thing that looked like it would destroy you will become the platform that displays His glory in your life. Family, remember this. The fire may be hot, but His presence is hotter. The enemy may mean it for harm, but God will always work it out for your good. That's His promise. Until next time, walk in purpose, stay anchored in faith, and know that even in the flames, He is with you. See you later, friends. Thanks for listening to Purpose of Heart, the podcast at www.purposeofheartpodcast.com. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. There's so much more God is doing, and I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you in advance for the reviews and shares. They help this message reach more hearts. I can't wait to walk with you again in next week's episode. See you there.